Karen laughingly threw a snowball straight at the guard's face and immediately froze. He suddenly stepped forward, and Karen went pale. But what happened next is something she would never forget. But let's start from the very beginning. London was wrapped in a gray winter light with soft snow covering the roads, rooftops, and the shoulders of tourists who filled the square in front of Buckingham Palace. The cold, slightly damp scent of winter lingered in the air, mixed with the rich aroma of hot coffee from the nearby food carts. Tourists snapped pictures of the majestic gates, marveled at the first snowfall, laughed and admired the motionless guards standing like statues in their red uniforms and towering bearskin hats. But one person in the crowd was not impressed. Karen. She stood with a sour expression, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot, her enormous pink puffer jacket straining at the seams, desperately trying to contain its occupant. The fabric stretched tightly over her massive stomach, the zipper barely holding under pressure, while the faux fur-lined hood did little to conceal her wild, unkempt red hair. Her leopard print leggings clung for dear life to her thick legs, and her black boots looked seconds away from surrendering under her weight. Her cheeks were flushed, not just from the cold, but from mild exhaustion. Even a short walk through the city felt like an endurance test. She pursed her lips irritably, folding her chubby arms across her chest. "So, what's the big deal?" she muttered, glancing at the palace. "This is your grand royal heritage?" Her loud, grating voice cut through the general hum of the crowd, making a few people turn their heads. She looked around for her companion, a skinny man in a blue jacket, who was doing his best to pretend he hadn't heard her. "Why are you so quiet, Jim?" Karen scoffed, puffing out her thick lips in irritation. "Sure, the palace is big, but hell, in Texas, Walmart parking lots are bigger." Jim coughed awkwardly, lowering his head, clearly wanting no part in this conversation. Then Karen's eyes landed on a particular sight: a motionless guard, a tall, fair-skinned young man in his mid-20s, with sharp cheekbones, military-perfect posture, and a cold, detached expression. His red uniform was flawless, and his bearskin hat made him look even more imposing. He stood completely still, like a statue. Karen squinted. "Is this guy even alive?" she said loudly, staring at the guard. A few people in the crowd shot her disapproving looks, but Karen didn't care. "Hey, you! Are you a robot or a person? Come on, blink or something." Her cheeks jiggled with frustration as she rubbed her puffer jacket impatiently, looking for a way to entertain herself. "He's ignoring you, Karen," Jim mumbled quietly, but she wasn't listening anymore. Karen looked around and spotted a pristine clump of snow on the ground. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Let's see if he's made of steel or not." With a dramatic groan, she bent down, a movement that took considerable effort. Her puffer jacket strained even harder, the fabric creaking ominously. Grabbing the snowball, she straightened up, breathless from the minimal exertion but grinning triumphantly. Jim turned to her in horror. "Karen, don't—" "Oh, relax. I'm just having some fun." Without hesitation, she pulled back her arm and hurled the snowball straight at the guard's face. Shock. The snowball smacked against his cheek with a sharp slap, bursting into powdery flakes that scattered across his perfectly pressed uniform. The crowd gasped. Several people pulled out their phones, but the real moment came next. The guard moved. "Step back!" His voice cut through the air like a thunderclap. The murmur of the crowd instantly turned into hushed gasps. A few tourists fumbled with their phones, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Karen froze. Her beady eyes widened, and her massive body seemed to glue itself to the ground. Every ounce of her confidence evaporated in an instant. The guard stood tall, as solid as stone. But now, he no longer looked lifeless. His posture remained rigidly perfect, yet there was an unmistakable air of command in the way he moved. He towered over her, his face expressionless, but his piercing gaze carried an unspoken warning. As if breaking free from a frozen moment in time, he took another step forward. "Step back! Immediately!" His voice carried such authority that Karen didn't even process that he was speaking directly to her. She blinked, her face twisting in confusion. What did you say?" she stammered, attempting to regain even a shred of her previous confidence, but her voice trembled. The guard didn't flinch. "Step back." Karen sucked in a sharp breath, but her body refused to move. Her chest heaved, and red splotches of humiliation spread across her cheeks. She wasn't used to this. She was used to talking while others listened. She was used to demanding and getting her way, or at the very least, making people uncomfortable enough to comply. But this man didn't care about her tone, her attitude, or her presence. For the first time, she faced true, unshakable authority. The guard stepped forward again, his polished boot striking the pavement with a loud crack, so loud that the sound echoed through the cold air. Karen, now fully panicked, instinctively stumbled backward. And then, her body betrayed her. She tripped over her own feet. Everything seemed to slow down. Her massive frame wobbled, her arms flailed wildly, trying to grasp at thin air. Her puffer jacket groaned under the strain, and her leopard print leggings stretched to their absolute limit. In a desperate attempt to regain balance, she took a step back, only to step on her own foot. Mistake. Her eyes widened in horror. She realized she was falling. The crowd collectively held its breath, and then, with a deafening thud, Karen crashed into the snow-covered pavement. It was a sound reminiscent of a fully stocked grocery aisle collapsing in Walmart. Snow erupted around her, as if she had landed in a cartoonishly oversized snowdrift. Silence. The crowd stood still, stunned by the absurdity of what they had just witnessed. The first sound to break the quiet was the crisp click of a phone camera capturing the perfect shot. And then, laughter. Loud, unrestrained, joyous laughter. A few people were already wiping tears from their eyes. "Oh my God! I got that on video!" someone shouted. "This is the best thing I've seen in London." Karen flailed helplessly in the snow, her chubby hands searching for support. But her own weight worked against her. She was stuck. Her body had betrayed her, just like an overconfident villain in a comedy movie. And the guard? He didn't even blink. He remained as still and expressionless as before, as if nothing had happened, but his gaze said it all. "You made a mistake." Her massive body crashed into the snow, leaving a deep imprint, while her pink puffer jacket stretched so tight it looked ready to burst. Her leopard print leggings groaned under the pressure, her boots flailed upward, exposing thick calves, and her arms sprawled helplessly to the sides. She could feel the icy snow slowly seeping into her clothes, creeping toward her skin. But what stung even more was something else: the laughter. People were howling. Some were doubled over, clutching their phones to ensure they didn't miss a single second of her humiliation. "Oh my God, I got that on video!" shouted a guy in a black jacket. "This is the best show ever, and it's free!" added a woman in a red scarf, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Avalanche incoming!" sparking another wave of hysterical laughter. Karen's face, already red from the cold, turned crimson. She sucked in a sharp breath, but it caught in her throat. Her nostrils flared, and rage ignited in her eyes. She had to get up, immediately. She jerked. Nothing. Tried again. Her body barely shifted. The puffer jacket squeezed around her waist like a trapped balloon, and her thick legs were awkwardly pinned beneath her. She was stuck. "Help me, you idiots!" she roared, waving her arms wildly, grasping at nothing. No one moved. The crowd was too busy enjoying the spectacle. Her companion, Skinny Jim, stood a few feet away with his face in his hand, praying for invisibility. "You can't do this to me!" she shrieked, trying to roll onto her side, but the puffer jacket restrained her. She looked like a turtle flipped onto its shell. The guard didn't even blink. He stood as still as ever, showing not the slightest acknowledgement of her existence, and that infuriated Karen more than anything. "Hey, you! Don't you see I fell?" she screamed, thrashing in the snow. Silence. "Are you a damn robot or what?" The guard didn't move. Karen's fists clenched. Everything was slipping out of her control. She was used to commanding, to getting a reaction. But this man, he saw her as nothing. Just empty space. Karen tried one more time to get up, using all her strength. She heaved her upper body forward. Her legs slid out from under her. The puffer jacket squeezed tighter. She was trapped in her own body. And then, heavy footsteps, the deep, rhythmic thud of boots on pavement. Someone was coming. Suddenly, the laughter faded. The sharp, deliberate steps of two men cut through the freezing air. Police, both in black coats, tall, serious, emotionless. They moved with the slow, calculated calm of men who had seen far worse than this. They didn't hurry. They didn't hesitate. Their presence alone was enough. The crowd went quiet, waiting for the inevitable. Karen's screeching still tore through the air. "Ma'am, your actions are considered a disturbance of public order," one of the officers stated in a flat, icy tone. Karen jerked upright. "What?" she shrieked, as if she'd been electrocuted. "It was just a snowball." The first officer didn't blink. The second raised a single eyebrow. "You assaulted a member of the Royal Guard," he clarified. His voice was calm, but it carried absolute finality. "You are required to leave the premises immediately." Karen howled. "No, I'm not leaving!" She lunged upward, trying to stand, but her body refused to obey. The puffer jacket squeezed tighter. Her legs slipped again. Her chubby arms flailed helplessly. The turtle on its back once more. The crowd held its breath. The officers glanced at each other. Then, in perfect unison, they stepped forward. "Then we'll assist you." And before Karen could protest, two firm hands grabbed her by the arms. She screamed, "Don't touch me!" Too late. They lifted her. Her face twisted in rage, panic, and pure horror. She thrashed violently, trying to break free, but the officer's grip was unyielding. "You can't do this!" she screeched, flailing. "I'm American! I have rights!" The crowd roared with laughter. The first officer leaned in slightly and, in a voice as indifferent as stone, whispered, "Yes, ma'am. And so do we." Karen gasped. The officers turned her around and marched her out of the square. The crowd exploded. Laughter, applause, whistles, a symphony of satisfaction. Phones stayed recording. People waved. Someone called out, "Bye, Karen." But the worst part? The guard never moved, never reacted, never acknowledged her existence. Karen was nothing, and she knew it. Karen was being led away from the square, but at this point, nothing could undo what had already happened. The cameras kept rolling, flashes lit up around her, and voices from the crowd hurled mocking remarks in her direction. Some people didn't even bother to hide their laughter, while others clapped their hands in sarcastic applause. Her massive body swayed from side to side as the officers firmly guided her toward the exit. She fought against their grip, twisting her arms, but their hold was unyielding. There was no way out of this. "Get your filthy hands off me!" she shrieked, but there was no longer any authority in her voice. It cracked, betraying her frustration, her humiliation, and the creeping realization that she had completely lost control. The crowd was thrilled. They weren't just watching a spectacle. They were witnessing a moment that belonged to history, one that would be replayed over and over again. And within minutes, that's exactly what happened. The video of Karen's downfall exploded across the internet. Titles on news sites and social media platforms competed to be the most dramatic, the most enticing, the most brutal. Entitled American Karen throws a snowball at a royal guard and pays the price. Royal guard puts rude tourist in her place after disrespectful stunt. Karen thought she could do whatever she wanted. London taught her a lesson. The number of views skyrocketed. People clipped the footage, edited it, remixed it. Someone slowed down the exact moment she crashed into the snow, adding dramatic music as if it were a scene from a war movie. Another person made a meme, a single frame of her sprawled in the snow, captioned, "Royal Guard 1, Karen 0. And then there were the comments. Endless, ruthless comments. The way she hits the snow, absolute perfection. I could watch this all day, so satisfying. This is why I love the British Royal Guard. Not even a single reaction. Stone cold. Peak entertainment. No reality show could ever top this. God, I hope she doesn't try to sue. But then again, she's Karen. Karen didn't sleep that night. By morning, she knew there was no salvaging her reputation. She had to leave. The next day, she walked through Heathrow Airport, head down, shoulders hunched, gripping her ticket so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every step felt heavier than the last. But even here, the stares followed her. She could hear the murmurs. She could see the sideways glances, the way people nudged each other as she passed by. Some tried to be discreet. Others didn't bother. A few even held up their phones, snapping pictures right in front of her. Then, as she passed a group of young women waiting at their gate, she heard a whisper, sharp, unmistakable. "Oh my God, that's the Karen from the video." Karen's stomach dropped. She quickened her pace, trying to put distance between herself and the voices. But there was no escape, because the internet never forgets.